The encounter in the woods. It was a quiet evening in the forest. The air was thick with mist, and the trees loomed tall, their branches barely moving in the wind. Mark, a young man, had been hiking for hours, trying to find his way back to the trail. He was tired and hungry, but there was no sign of civilization. The thick fog made everything seem blurry and strange. As Mark walked deeper into the woods, he heard something. It was soft at first, like a rustling sound, but then it became louder, almost like whispers. He stopped and listened. The voices sounded different, not like anything he had heard before. Curious, he decided to investigate. He walked toward the sound, his heart beating faster with every step. The fog was so thick now that he could barely see a few feet ahead. But then, through the mist, he saw them. 2 figures, standing by a small clearing. They looked human, but something was off. They were thin, almost too thin, and their skin had a strange pale glow to it. Their eyes shone with an otherworldly light, and their clothes were torn and ragged. Mark hesitated. Who were these people? Why were they out here in the middle of nowhere? He thought about turning back, but something about them made him feel like he should help. The 2 figures stood still, watching him with eyes that seemed to pierce through the fog. One of them, a young girl with silver blue hair, stepped forward. Her gaze locked with his, and for a moment, Mark felt as though she was looking right into his soul. Her voice was soft, almost a whisper, but he could understand her words as if she was speaking directly in his mind. "Please, ... we are hungry," she said, her voice trembling slightly. Mark's heart sank. He had been hungry himself, but how could he leave them here, alone and weak? Without thinking, he pulled out the bag of fruit he had in his backpack. It wasn't much, but it was all he had. He took it and stepped forward, offering it to her. "Here," he said softly, "this is all I have, but it should help." The girl looked at the fruit in his hand, her expression unreadable. She didn't take it right away. Instead, she glanced at her companion, another girl who stood motionless, watching Mark. The second girl, though silent, looked as if she had been through a great deal of suffering. Her clothes were torn, and her eyes were dull, full of fear and exhaustion. Finally, the first girl took the fruit from Mark's hand. She brought it to her lips, biting into it cautiously. As she did, something strange happened. The moment the fruit touched her lips, a faint glow seemed to surround her, as though the food was filling her with energy. Mark blinked in surprise, his eyes widening at the sight. It was as if the fruit was doing something more than just nourishing her body. The girl's expression softened, and she looked back at Mark, her eyes full of gratitude. "Thank you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. We needed this." Mark smiled, relieved that he had helped in some small way. But just as he was about to turn and leave, the second girl stepped forward. Her eyes were wide, with curiosity, and she seemed to be studying him carefully. "You're different," she said softly, her voice trembling slightly, "not like others." Mark frowned. "What do you mean?" he asked, confused by her words. But before she could answer, the first girl spoke again, her voice urgent. "We can't stay here. They will come soon. You need to leave." Mark's heart skipped a beat. "Who will come?" he asked, feeling a chill run down his spine. But the girls didn't answer. Instead, they turned and began to walk away, moving silently through the fog. Mark stood there for a moment, unsure of what to do. Something wasn't right, but he couldn't just walk away. He needed to know more about these strange beings and what was happening. He followed them at a distance, staying just far enough behind so they wouldn't notice. He didn't know what he was getting into, but he couldn't shake the feeling that his life was about to change forever. There was something powerful about the way the girls moved, as if they were connected to something far beyond this world. They weren't just ordinary people. Mark kept walking, his mind racing with questions. Who were they? Why were they out here in the woods? And what did they mean by "they will come"? Whatever the answers were, Mark knew one thing for sure: he was caught in something much bigger than himself. The adventure he had never asked for had just begun. The sisters' origins Mark had followed the strange girls for what seemed like hours. The mist had only thickened, wrapping the forest in an eerie silence. The fog felt alive, swirling around him, making it difficult to see more than a few feet ahead. Despite the uncertainty, something pulled him forward, a strange feeling that urged him to keep going. He watched as the two girls moved effortlessly through the dense forest. Their pace was unnatural, as though they were gliding rather than walking. Their feet barely made a sound, and the soft glow around them seemed to light the path ahead. Mark couldn't help but feel both amazed and unnerved by their presence. There was something so ... otherworldly about them. After a while, they reached a clearing, and Mark carefully stepped into it. The girls had stopped at the edge of a small, serene pond, where the mist settled and a faint moonlight cast an ethereal glow over the water. It was the perfect place for answers, yet the air still felt tense, like a storm was about to break. The first girl, the one with silver blue hair, turned to him. Her face was solemn, yet her eyes shimmered with a deep, hidden emotion. She seemed to hesitate for a moment before she spoke again. "You're different," she said softly, her voice barely audible over the rustling of the trees. "You're not afraid of us." Mark shifted uncomfortably, unsure how to respond. "I'm not afraid," he replied, "but I don't understand what's happening. Who are you? Why were you out there in the woods?" The second girl, the one who had said little so far, looked at him with wide, curious eyes. Her gaze seemed intense, as though she could read his every thought. Mark felt a shiver run down his spine. There was something in her eyes so knowing, a recognition of something he couldn't explain. "We are not from here," the first girl explained, stepping closer to the water. "We were sent here to escape, to survive." Mark's brow furrowed. Escape from what? The girl with silver blue hair glanced at her companion before answering, her voice barely above a whisper. "We are the last of our kind. We come from a distant planet, one that no longer exists." Mark's heart skipped a beat. He had heard of alien sightings, but this was beyond anything he had imagined. He couldn't quite process what she was saying. His mind was still trying to wrap itself around the idea of actual aliens, real, living creatures who weren't from this world. "We were born on a planet called Terrify," the girl continued, her voice growing stronger as she spoke of her past. "It was a place of peace and beauty. We lived among others like us, and for a time we were happy. But our world, it was destroyed." The second girl spoke now, her voice soft but full of sorrow. "The invaders came. They destroyed everything. We were the last ones to escape. We've been running ever since." Mark stared at them in disbelief. He wanted to ask more, to understand how such a thing was even possible, but the words caught in his throat. The sisters had just confirmed what Mark had suspected, that they were not from Earth. But where had they gone? And why were they still here? "They will find us," the first girl said quietly, her eyes glancing nervously toward the misty trees. "And when they do, it will be the end of us." Mark could see the fear in her eyes now. The calm facade had faded, replaced by an urgent need to survive. The second girl stepped closer to her, placing a hand on her shoulder, trying to offer comfort. But Mark could tell that the fear had already taken root deep inside them both. Who are they? These invaders? Mark asked, unable to keep the question to himself anymore. They are not of this world, the first girl replied. They come from the dark side of the galaxy, their hunger for power. It destroyed our home, and now they seek to finish what they started. Mark was stunned. This was no ordinary tale. These sisters weren't just survivors, they were part of a much larger, more dangerous story. And somehow, he had been caught up in it. But why? Why had they chosen him? Why had they trusted him enough to share their secrets? The first girl's voice broke through his thoughts. We don't want to bring this danger to your world, but you, ... You are different. There's something about you that's different from everyone else we've met. We don't know why, but we need your help. Mark's mind raced. Help them? How could he possibly help? He was just a regular person. But something in the way they spoke, the way they looked at him, made him believe that he could be more than just a bystander. I'll help, Mark said, before he even realized it. What do you need me to do? The two girls exchanged a look, as if weighing his words, and then the first girl nodded. We have to stop them before they find us, before they destroy everything. As the fog thickened around them, Mark felt a strange sense of determination surge within him. He wasn't just going to walk away from this. He had already stepped into something far bigger than himself, and now he had a choice to make. Would he fight alongside these alien sisters too? Protect both them and the world he knew? He wasn't sure what would happen next, but one thing was certain. Nothing would ever be the same again. The hidden power, the silence that followed was thick and heavy, as if the very air around them was holding its breath. Mark's mind was racing, trying to make sense of what the girls had just revealed. The invaders, a destroyed planet, a fight for survival. It all felt like something out of a science fiction novel. Yet here they were, two alien sisters standing in front of him, each glowing faintly in the dim moonlight, their faces full of both fear and determination. Tell me more. About the invaders, Mark said, his voice quiet but insistent. He needed to understand what he was up against if he was going to help them. What are they like? Why do they want you? The first girl, the one with silver blue hair, looked at her sister before speaking again. They are creatures of darkness, driven by an insatiable hunger for power. They conquer worlds, destroy them, and move on to the next. Our planet, Terrify, was just one of many they've taken. We were the lucky ones, the last survivors. Mark absorbed her words, his mind struggling to picture the horrors she spoke of. How did you escape them? The second girl, who had remained mostly silent, finally spoke up, her voice soft but carrying a weight of sorrow. We were hidden. For a long time, Seraphis had protection from a powerful force shield that kept us safe. But the invaders found a way to break through it. We had to flee, and we've been running ever since. Mark looked from one sister to the other. Their faces were pale, their eyes haunted, as if they were carrying the weight of an entire destroyed world on their shoulders. He could see the exhaustion in their movements, the tension in their gazes. They had been running for far too long. What about your powers? Mark asked, a new thought suddenly striking him. You're different, the way you moved. You're not like us. The first girl nodded slowly. You're right. We have abilities that are not of this world. They are a part of us, a gift from the energy of Seraphis. Our planet was unique. It was connected to the fabric of the universe in a way that no other planet is. We could feel the pulse of the cosmos itself, and with that connection came ability that helped us survive. Mark's eyes widened. Powers. He'd already seen the way the sisters glowed when they ate the fruit, but he hadn't realized the full extent of their abilities. The second girl stepped forward, her gaze locking with Mark's. You don't understand yet, but soon you will. You're not just a bystander in this. You're connected to us now. Mark was confused. Connected? How? The first girl's voice was calm, but there was a sense of urgency in it. We don't know how or why, but from the moment we ate, the food you offered, something changed. It was as if we were bound to you and you to us. The energy we share is now tied to you. And that energy, it has awakened something inside you. Mark's stomach tightened. What did she mean? Was he becoming like them? Was he developing powers, too? The thoughts seemed impossible. He was just an ordinary guy, lost in the woods, trying to help the stranded alien sisters. And yet, something about their words felt, true. The strange connection he felt with them, the inexplicable pull to help them, it all seemed to be leading him down a path he couldn't turn away from. The invaders are coming, the first girl said, her voice sharp, pulling Mark out of his thoughts. And we need to be ready. We have power, but it's not enough to stop them. They are too strong, too many. We need something more, something that only you can help us unlock. Mark's heart raced. What do you want me to do? The second girl's eyes glowed brightly. We can't fight them alone. We need you to help us unlock the full potential of our powers. There's an ancient force hidden deep within the forest. It's said to be the key to defeating the invaders. But we can't access it without your help. Mark swallowed hard. What kind of force? The first girl took a step toward him, her face serious. It's the energy of Seraphis, the last of the cosmic forces. It's a power beyond our understanding, a force that can stop the invaders in their tracks. But it's hidden, and only someone with the right connection can unlock it. Mark's mind was spinning. The forest, an ancient force. He was still struggling to understand the full scope of what was happening, but one thing was certain. He was in deeper than he had ever imagined. He wasn't just helping these two sisters survive. He was being pulled into a fight for the future of worlds, and the stakes were higher than he could have ever expected. We need to find it, the first girl said, her voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. We don't have much time. Mark nodded, determination filling him. Despite his confusion, he had already made a choice. Whether he understood everything or not, he couldn't turn back now. The sisters turned, leading him deeper into the mist. Their glowing figures seemed to shine brighter in the darkness, a beacon of hope and power in the middle of the unknown. Mark followed them, his thoughts racing, knowing that the journey ahead would be nothing like anything he had ever experienced. The transformation, the journey through the foggy forest grew darker with every step. The mist clung to Mark's skin, chilling him to the bone, but he couldn't bring himself to stop. He was now walking beside two alien sisters, each one glowing faintly, their presence comforting yet filled with an unspoken weight. The gravity of the situation was sinking in. He wasn't just lost in the woods anymore. He was part of something much bigger than himself. They had told him about the invaders, the cosmic forces threatening to destroy everything in their path. They had told him about their powers that had helped them survive, but now seemed too weak to fend off the impending danger. And they had told him that he was connected to them in a way they didn't fully understand, a connection that could unlock the hidden force they needed to defeat the invaders. The air was heavy with tension. With every step, Mark felt a deeper sense of urgency. The sisters had been running for so long, but now they were heading toward something ancient and powerful. Mark had no idea what it was, but he knew that it could change everything. They stopped in front of a large, gnarled tree, its twisted roots stretching out like fingers across the ground. The tree was ancient, its bark dark and cracked, but there was something oddly familiar about it. As Mark stepped closer, he felt an unfamiliar, polar magnetic force that seemed to call to him. The first girl, the one with silver blue hair, turned to him. "This is it. The place we've been looking for," she said quietly. Mark glanced around, confusion written on his face. This tree. The second girl, who had been silent for most of the journey, stepped forward. Her eyes glowed brighter now, the intensity of the light growing with each passing moment. "It's not just a tree. This is the heart of the force we need to awaken. This tree, it is the source of Seraphi's power. But it is dormant now. We need to unlock its energy. And you, ... you are the key." Mark's heart raced. "Me? How am I the key? I'm just a guy from Earth. I don't have any powers." The silver-haired girl smiled softly, though there was a sadness in her eyes. "You do now. The moment we ate the fruit you gave us, something changed. You were connected to us, to our world. The energy inside you is awakening." Mark felt a strange sensation deep inside him, like something was stirring. His hands tingled, a warmth spreading through his chest, and he felt the pull of the tree. More strongly now. It was as though the tree was calling to him, its ancient power beckoning him closer. "Place your hand on the tree," the silver-haired girl instructed. Mark hesitated, but did as she said. His fingers brushed against the rough bark, and in that moment, a wave of energy coursed through him. It was unlike anything he had ever felt, like a surge of warmth and light mixed with something deep and primal. His vision blurred, and he heard a soft whisper in his mind, a voice that seemed to come from the tree itself. "You are the chosen one, the one who will awaken the force." Mark pulled his hand back, startled. "What was that?" The second girl stepped forward, her eyes glowing brighter now, as if the energy from the tree was resonating with her. "It's the tree's voice. It recognizes you. The energy of Seraphi's is inside you, and it's awakening. You must embrace it." Mark felt his heart pound in his chest as he struggled to understand what was happening. Was this real? Was he really becoming part of this alien power? The sisters seemed so sure, but he still didn't feel any different except for the strange warmth inside him. "You have to concentrate," the silver-haired girl said softly, her gaze unwavering. "Focus on the tree. Let its power flow through you. Trust that the connection is real." Mark closed his eyes, taking a deep breath. He could feel the energy, like a hum beneath his skin, vibrating in sync with the pulse of the earth beneath his feet. He felt a sudden rush of images in his mind, visions of a peaceful planet, Seraphis, and the destruction it had faced. He saw the invaders, dark figures with no faces, tearing through cities, leaving nothing but devastation in their wake. And then a new vision came to him, vision of himself standing beside the sisters, their glowing forms merging with his. Together, they were a force of light and energy, unstoppable against the darkness that threatened their world. The vision faded as quickly as it had come, and Mark opened his eyes, his breath shallow. What was that? You saw it, the second girl said, her voice full of wonder. That is the power we need. That is what you can help us unlock. Mark shook his head, still in disbelief. I don't know if I can do this. I'm just a guy who got lost in the woods. The silver-haired girl stepped closer, her hand resting gently on his arm. You're not just a guy. You're a part of this now. The energy is in you. All you have to do is accept it. Mark felt a strange weight lift from his chest as the warmth inside him grew stronger. He wasn't sure how to control it, but he could feel it. He could feel the power stirring within him, as if it had always been there, waiting for this moment. The first girl smiled softly. You've already begun. Now we must prepare. The invaders are coming, and they'll stop at nothing to destroy everything we've fought for. Mark looked up at the tree, his hand still warm from where he had touched it. The power was real, and so was the danger. He was no longer just a bystander in their fight. He was part of something much bigger, and no matter how uncertain he felt, he knew that he couldn't turn back now. The dark forces, the air around them grew colder as the mist began to thicken once again. The distant sounds of the forest seemed to fade into a strange, suffocating silence. Mark could feel the weight of the world pressing down on him, but he wasn't sure if it was the growing power inside him or the looming threat that hung over them all. The sisters had led him to the heart of the forest, to the ancient tree that had unlocked something deep inside him. He had felt the power, the energy of Seraphis coursing through him, awakening something that he didn't fully understand. The force had connected him to the sisters in a way that was both unsettling and comforting. He wasn't just helping them anymore. He was part of their struggle, part of something far larger than himself. But now, the reality of the situation was setting in. The invaders were coming, and they wouldn't stop until everything was destroyed. Mark had no idea how to fight them. He was just a regular guy, after all. What could he do against an intergalactic army? They will be here soon, the first girl, with silver blue hair, said, her voice quiet but full of urgency. And when they come, there's no escaping them. Mark swallowed hard, trying to steady his breathing. He had known the danger was coming, but hearing it from the sisters made it feel far too real. The invaders were no longer just a vague threat. They were a force of darkness, relentless and all-consuming. They will use everything they have to find us, the second girl added, her eyes glowing brightly as she looked around, scanning the forest as if expecting the darkness to descend at any moment. Their army is vast, and they have no mercy. Mark felt a chill run down his spine. How can we stop them? He asked, his voice shaking despite himself. I don't have any idea what I'm doing. I'm not like you. I can't fight them. The sisters exchanged a look, and for a brief moment, Mark saw a flicker of doubt in their eyes. But then the first girl stepped closer, her gaze locking onto his. You don't have to fight them the way we do, she said. The power within you is different. It's not like ours, but it's still strong. Together, we can use it to stop them. Mark frowned. How? How can I help? I don't even know what I'm supposed to do. The first girl took a deep breath, and for the first time since they had met, she seemed uncertain. We don't fully understand the connection between us yet, but the tree has granted you something. It has connected you to the very core of Seraphis, to the energy that can fight the darkness, but it's up to you to unlock it. We can guide you, but only you can release the full potential of that power. Mark shook his head, still struggling to comprehend. I don't know if I can do this. I don't have any training. I'm just a guy who's in the wrong place at the wrong time. The second girl stepped forward, her eyes full of empathy. You've already done more than you realize. You've helped us. You've fed us when we were starving. You've awakened the power of Seraphis. But now you need to believe in it. You need to trust that you can make a difference. Mark looked at her, then at the first girl. Both of them were so sure, so confident. He felt a spark of hope flicker deep inside him, but the fear was still there, gnawing at him. But the invaders? They're too powerful, Mark said, his voice barely above a whisper. They've destroyed worlds. The first girl replied, her voice filled with a quiet fury. But they haven't faced what we are capable of. Together, we will fight back. The energy of Seraphis is within you, and it is stronger than you realize. Just then, the wind picked up, sending a cold shiver through the forest. The trees swayed, and Mark could feel something shifting in the air. The ground beneath his feet seemed to tremble slightly, as if the forest itself was preparing for the battle to come. They're here, the second girl said softly, her gaze fixed on the horizon. They've found us. Mark's heart pounded in his chest. He didn't know what to do. His mind was racing, but nothing made sense. He wasn't a soldier. He wasn't a hero. He was just a guy from Earth, caught up in a battle he didn't understand. Stay close, the first girl said, her voice firm now. We need to reach the center of the forest. There's a place where the energy is strongest. We have to get there before they do. Mark nodded, his legs shaking beneath him. He didn't know if he could do this, but he knew one thing. He wasn't going to run. Not now, not after everything that had happened. The sisters had trusted him. They had given him their power, their hope. He couldn't turn away from them now. Together, they began to move through the forest, the mist swirling around, them growing thicker with every step. Mark could feel the tension rising, the air growing heavier as they neared the center of the forest. Something powerful was waiting for them, their force that could change everything. But would it be enough to stop the invaders? The sacrifice of forest grew darker as they moved deeper into the heart of it. Mark could feel the weight of the impending battle pressing down on him with each step. The energy from the ancient tree still pulsed through him, warm and strong, but also unfamiliar. His body felt alive with power, yet he had no idea how to control it. The sisters walked ahead, their glowing forms cutting through the mist, each step full of purpose. But even they seemed tense, as if they, too, were unsure of what was to come. They reached a clearing, and Mark felt a sudden change in the air. The forest was quiet now, too quiet. There were no sounds of the wind, no rustling of leaves, only an eerie silence that seemed to stretch endlessly. The sisters stopped in front of a large stone altar, half buried in the ground, covered in moss and vines. Mark stared at it, feeling an intense pull from it, as though it was calling him. "This is the place," the first girl said, her voice serious. She turned to Mark, her eyes filled with both hope and fear. "The power of Seraphis flows strongest here. If we are to stand a chance against the invaders, we must tap into it." Mark felt a surge of energy inside him at her words. It was as if the power of Seraphis was alive within him, ready to be unleashed. But there was something else, something deeper, darker, that had been lingering just beneath the surface. He could feel it now, a pull to something more, something dangerous. What do I need to do? Mark asked, trying to steady his breathing. The second girl, her eyes now glowing intensely, stepped forward. We need to unlock the full potential of this power, but we cannot do it alone. We need you, Mark. You are the key. Mark swallowed hard. He could feel the weight of her words, the burden of what they were asking of him. What do you mean? I'm the key. She stepped closer, her face grave. This power is not just a weapon. It's the last hope of Seraphis. It is connected to us, but also to you now. You must accept it fully, embrace it, or it will consume you. Mark's heart raced in his chest. The thought of accepting such immense power was terrifying. What if he couldn't control it? What if it overwhelmed him? But he knew one thing: he couldn't back down now. The invaders were coming. This was their only chance. The first girl placed her hand on the stone altar, her eyes closed in concentration. A soft hum filled the air, vibrating through the ground beneath them. Mark stepped forward, hesitantly placing his hand on the stone as well. The moment his fingers touched the cool surface, a flood of energy rushed through him, more intense than anything he had ever felt before. It was as if the very essence of Seraphis was coursing through his veins, filling him with power and light. But along with the light came a deep, pulsing darkness, a shadow that seemed to whisper to him, calling him to embrace it. He pulled his hand away, breathing heavily. I can feel it, the power, but it's too much. I can't control it. The second girl's eyes flashed with concern, but she did not pull away. You must trust it, Mark. Trust yourself. The power is within you, but you need to focus. If you don't, it will destroy you and everything else. Mark closed his eyes, trying to block out the darkness, the whispers, the pull to something dangerous. He focused on the light, on the warmth, and slowly, the energy inside him began to settle. It wasn't easy. Every part of him fought against it, but he kept his focus, trying to draw the power of Seraphis to the surface. He could feel it now, flowing through him like a river of pure light. The first girl opened her eyes, her gaze locking with Mark's. You've done it. The power is yours. But just as she spoke, the ground trembled beneath them. A low, rumbling sound echoed through the forest, and Mark's heart skipped a beat. The invaders were closer than they had anticipated. The air was thick with the threat of their arrival, and Mark knew that there was no time left. We don't have much time, the second girl said urgently. They're coming. Mark turned to face the sisters. He could feel the weight of the power within him, and with it, a terrible realization. There was one more thing he needed to do. One more sacrifice. What's wrong? The first girl asked, noticing the change in his expression. Mark's voice was strained as he spoke, his heart heavy with the decision he had to make. To stop them, ... I have to give everything. I have to give up the power I've just unlocked. The sisters stared at him in shock. No, the first girl whispered. You can't. This is our only chance. But Mark knew what he had to do. The darkness within him pulled to embrace the full force of Seraphis was too strong. It wasn't just the power he needed to control. It was the part of him that the invaders would seek to destroy. To stop them, he would have to sacrifice the very thing that made him powerful. He stepped forward, placing both hands on the stone altar. If I don't give up this power, it will consume me. And if I let it consume me, it will consume everything. The sisters moved toward him, but they knew there was no stopping him. Mark closed his eyes, focusing on the power within him. Slowly, Painfully, he began to release it, giving up the very thing that had connected him to the energy of Seraphis. The world around him began to fade, the light dimming as he sacrificed the last of the power inside him. It was the hardest thing he had ever done, but in that moment, he knew it was the only way to save them all. The final gift, the air in the forest had become thick, heavy with anticipation and the looming threat of destruction. Mark felt weak, drained from the sacrifice he had made. The energy that had once surged within him was now gone, leaving only an empty hollow where it had been. The sisters stood by, their glowing eyes filled with both sorrow and gratitude. They knew what he had just given up, and they understood the gravity of the moment. "They're here," the first girl whispered, her voice barely audible. Her gaze was locked on the horizon, where the darkness seemed to swirl, creeping closer by the second. Mark felt it too, that sense of impending doom, like the very fabric of the forest was shaking under the weight of what was to come. The invaders, the force of darkness that had already consumed Seraphis, were coming to finish what they had started. Mark knew they had no time left. The second girl stepped forward, her face calm but her eyes filled with resolve. "We've done all we can. We've prepared you. Now we fight." Mark looked at her, confusion and exhaustion still clouding his mind. "But we don't have the power we need. I've given it all up. We can't fight them without." The first girl placed a hand on his shoulder, her grip firm and steady. "We still have something left, something more important than power." Mark turned to her, his brow furrowing. "What do you mean? I don't understand." "You," she said simply, her voice full of conviction. "Your sacrifice. It's what makes you the final key." Mark blinked, not fully grasping her words. "I don't feel like a key. I feel ... useless." The second girl smiled faintly. "That's because you haven't realized it yet. The power you gave up it was never meant to be yours forever. It was a part of you, yes, but it wasn't the whole picture. The true gift ... is in what you've learned, in what you've done." Mark's heart pounded as the realization began to settle in. His sacrifice wasn't in vain. He hadn't lost everything. He had gained something deeper, something more meaningful than just raw power. "We've been running from the invaders for so long," the first girl continued, "but we've always forgotten the one thing that could defeat them. The one thing that's been with us all along." She looked directly at Mark, her eyes locking with his. "It's not power that stops them. It's hope. It's the will to protect the things we love. The strength of the heart, the strength of kindness. That is the true weapon." Mark's chest tightened as the weight of her words hit him. All this time, he had been focused on the wrong things, the strength, the energy, the battle. But in the end, it wasn't about defeating the invaders with power. It was about something much more profound. It was about the choices they made, the courage to fight for something bigger than themselves. "We've given you the gift of connection," the second girl said softly. "And that connection is more powerful than any weapon. When you gave up the power, you didn't just give up the energy of Seraphis. You gave up your fear. You gave up your doubt. And that is what makes you stronger than anyone else. You've learned the most important lesson of all." Mark looked down at his hands, now empty of the energy that had once filled him. But instead of feeling weak, he felt something else, something stronger, deeper. It was the feeling of purpose, of understanding. He looked back up at the sisters, determination rising in his chest. "Then let's stop them. Let's show them that we won't be destroyed." With a deep breath, Mark stepped forward, his heart beating steady with newfound strength. The sisters stood by him, their hands raised to the sky, their energy flowing out like a beacon of light. As the invaders drew nearer, the forest around them seemed to respond, the trees bending and shifting as if in preparation for the coming storm. But Mark wasn't afraid anymore. He didn't need to wield the cosmic weapon to fight. He didn't need the power of Seraphis. He had something more powerful now, the courage to stand by the sisters, the will to fight for a future they all deserved. The darkness arrived, swirling around them like a storm, but Mark held his ground. The sisters stood tall, their eyes glowing brightly, casting a radiant light that seemed to push back the shadows. Together, they were a force of light, their unity stronger than anything the invaders could bring. The battle began, but it wasn't a battle of power or strength. It was a battle of will, of hope, of standing up for what was right. Mark fought, not with weapons, but with his heart, with the belief that the darkness could be defeated, that kindness and courage could win in the end. And as the first invader approached, something remarkable happened. The energy of Seraphis began to surge back, not from the sisters or from Mark himself, but from the very forest around them. The ancient power they had awakened was tied not just to one person, but to everything. The trees, the earth, the very air they breathed, each one was part of the fight. Together, they formed a barrier of light that the invaders couldn't penetrate. With a final push, the darkness was shattered. The invaders, unable to withstand the strength of their unity, vanished into the nothingness from which they had come. The forest fell silent, the mist dissipating, the air light and fresh. Mark collapsed to his knees, exhausted but relieved. The sisters knelt beside him, their expressions filled with gratitude. "We did it," the first girl whispered, her voice full of awe. "You did it." Mark smiled, weak but content. "We did it together." As the last remnants of the darkness faded, the sisters stood, looking toward the horizon. The battle was over, but their journey had only just begun. Mark had given everything his power, his fear, his doubts, and in return, he had gained something far more precious, the strength to protect what mattered. The final gift was not in the power he had unlocked, but in the lessons he had learned along the way. It was the gift of hope, of courage, of knowing that no matter how dark the world became, there was always light to guide them forward. And with that, Mark and the sisters began their new journey, one where they would protect each other and the world they had fought so hard to save.